this is just a brief introduction to the invasions, what to look out for, what you kind of need to run the sites in general, how I suggest you run them, but not how you're required to run them. The biggest thing to keep in mind is that the first night of the invasion, when it's in the scouts reported phase, it's going to be really slow running. There's only one system that's going to have sites, and it's not going to have very many of them. It's going to have like 4 or 5 at max. So ideally, I mean, you can run, but you're going to be running slow. You're going to be waiting for respawns and all that stuff. Luckily, that phase only lasts 24 hours. Then we get into the conduit stabilized phase. At this point, major conduits are available, minor conduits are available, and minor conduits are now available in both the foothold and the adjacent system. So you can basically run in 2 systems if you can picket them easily enough, and twice the sites, and actually almost 3 times the sites, because the adjacent system will have 4, the foothold system will have 6 minors and 4 majors. The next phase is going to be the World Arc Detected phase. This is the most profitable time to run. There's minor conduits in every system of the invasion. 3 in the perimeter systems. I want to say 4 in the adjacent system and 6 in the foothold. I could be slightly wrong on some of those numbers. We're still checking some of this stuff. Major conduits are now going to be available in the foothold and the adjacent system. I'm not sure at all on the numbers on those, unfortunately. And the World Arc shows up. If you run the World Arc site, the invasion goes straight to withdrawing. Withdrawing is a 24-hour period, which is it's a period exactly like the World Arc Detected period, but there's no World Arc anymore. Everything else pretty much remains the same. So ideally, we want the World Arc phase to last as long as possible. Then we pop it as it is going to reach natural withdrawing anyway. Then we, move on after the end of the withdrawing phase. The good news is you can run the World Arc and still have an invasion afterwards. It's not an immediate drop like it is in incursions. So the two biggest sites you'll run most of the time are minor conduits and major conduits. The minor conduits are going to be for like 3 to 4 pilots, and I think the best comp will probably be like a Vindy, a Nightmare. Mostly because there is one rat that keeps it 40 kilometers. The Nightmare has good enough tracking to hit all the smaller stuff, and the Vindy's just going to clean up the frigates. If you have a really good skilled Vindy, you will one-shot pretty much everything in there, and 2-shot some of the larger stuff. Yeah, correct, Tristan. LP is not tied to the World Arc dying. You get LP just for completing the site. So we don't have to actually kill the World Arc in order to get our LP paid out, which is a nice change in my opinion. The other type of site you will run is called a major conduit. This one's a lot bigger. You're probably going to want 3 or 4 DD, a booster, and 3 Guardian or Basilisk Logi. Unfortunately, there's also a lot of newts and newt pressure, so you're probably going to want the tech to cap transfer logistics, which are Bazzi and Guardian. There's more salvage, there's more money, takes longer to run though, and there is a lot more DPS to deal with. I don't think you technically need a booster for either the minor or the major conduits, but just like incursions, the booster will make things go faster. It gives you longer web range, makes you tankier, all that fun jazz. And the World Arc I haven't actually run yet, but you're probably, based off what I've seen, you're probably going to want 10 pilots, 4 or 5 Logi, the rest DD, and then a booster, so really 11 pilots. We will try to run the World Arc here, assuming someone else doesn't beat us to it. But like I said, haven't run it, so we'll see what it's like. I've looked into it a bit. It's very interesting, but there's only been a couple. As far as running armor or shield, if you have a cap battery, a Tech 2 cap battery, large, medium, whatever it fits your hull size, and I'll link one in Incursions for you. It shouldn't really matter what you tank or what ship you bring, because the cap battery will basically override the nuding pressure that you get. I don't have a cap battery on this character. Interesting.
1 second.
But the rats you really need to look out for in these sites, especially as uni, is anything with the prefix of anchoring. You should only ever run into anchoring Damoviks and Kikimoras, which can be killed very quickly. They're basically they actually have a warp scram. I haven't tested if this takes out a micro warp drive, but it does show up as a warp scram on the system notification. So for uni, since we do have to deal with war targets, we're going to want to take out these warp scram capable ships. The only other warp scram capable ships are any Zorias. So Zoria Damoviks, Triglavians, Vedmeks, Lashaks. All of those can scram. So for uni, we want to make Zorias and anchorings the primaries, so we can, at worst case, warp off if war targets show up. This is a bit of a problem in the minor conduits, as the Zoria's Lashak is very tanky and will slow down the site. So it may be necessary for aggro to be split with whoever your long-range DPS is, taking out the Zoria, your Vindicator cleaning up, or your Vindicator and your Rokes and your short range taking care of some of the other concerns on grid before moving on to the Lashak. Other ships you need to concern yourself with, there's a warp disruption, I believe it's called a harrowing. Double check my notes here. Ghosting, it's ghosting, not harrowing. Any ghosting or ship needs to die because it both tracking disrupts and missile disrupts. So if you can get those off the grid, you can keep your application up and therefore keep your DPS up. So your biggest concerns are, of course, your warp disruptions, your warp scramblers, the anchoring, and the Zorias. Then you're going to want to take care of anything that does tracking, because it's a very nasty tracking penalty. I believe those are ghosting. It's either ghosting or harrowing. I keep getting those two backwards. But every rat has a specific kind of EWAR. Starvings will have cap neutralization, renewings or logistics, blindings or sensor dampening, tanglings or stasis webbifiers. So it's pretty straightforward what each one does, and once you get in there shooting them, you become real familiar with what they do quickly. Which your exact order for shooting will change depending on the fleet you're running. But in general, I recommend taking out anchorings, Zorias, then ghosting, harrowing, and after that it's kind of free fire, because everything else, yes, it hurts you, but it won't kill you. Whereas those will kill you if you're not careful. Like I said earlier, the major sites, it's the same rats. They just get a little bit bigger. You have some slightly bigger sizes, like you have more Vedmeks, you have more Lashaks, more Dracoviks. But they do the same thing, and they still have the same prefixes, which still tell you exactly what they do. So focus on anchorings, get down your Zorias, and you should be good if you have to warp off for war targets. After that, it's going to be ghosting, harrowing, depending on what your FC calls, that sort of thing. There was a question, are we doing armor or shield? We're doing both. Like I said, the shield does require a capacitor to keep your tank online, which is a bit of a problem, but if you're primarying the Zorias, which are the only really big neuters, you should be fine. Plus, with the addition of the tech to capacitor logistics, you should never run out of cap. And worst case, you turn your guns off and you're still okay. I do think armor's technically safer just because your tank can't be cut off, but our community shield, so we're going to run shield for the most part. Armor, we'll probably still do armor on occasion just because I know a lot of us have the skills for armor. At least for the time being, we'll be both for invasions. We'll be both armor and shield, just depending on who shows up, what skills they have, what logistics are there, all that good jazz. But I think that's all we really need to worry about. Like I said, just a couple quick points here. Anchorings and Zoyas get killed first. If you're going into miners, you really only need one logistics, but because we're uni, we're running safe, so bring 2 logistics. If you're going to majors, bring 3 logistics, ideally all of them either guards or bazzies. And most of our payouts not going to come from the site completion itself, but from loot and salvage. So we're going to need nesters, and we're going to need salvager destroyers if we don't have nesters. But beyond that, they're just like incursions. You're going to have to deal with people contesting you. You're going to have to deal with people trying to sneak payouts, be lazy, that sort of stuff. So it's nothing y'all aren't used to. Any questions while we're all here on comms? Yeah, Noctis.
Just for the voice recording.
You know, that brain just doesn't work sometimes, guys. But another big point, if you're running these sites, I know I'm a Vindy fanatic, but Vindies are amazing in these sites just for how much small stuff there is. Like, you think incursions have a lot of small frigates. These are like, in the minor conduits, it's 90% small ships. In the majors, it's like 70% small ships. You really need a Vindicator, and ideally the more skilled, the better. But I think that's it.